Unfortunately for us, we've kind of run out of content. I'm searching for races with the MR2, but nobody touches us. I text people randomly on racing pages, etc., and they still deny us. And I've challenged people from 200 up to 300 horsepower, but they still find a way to just deny and say that they are not looking for a race with an MR2. For that specific reason, I thought of a video idea, and the question that comes every single time that I talk about my car is, how much did the swap cost? In this video, we'll be talking about how much a swap may cost in your country, but all around the globe as well. We might all live in the same planet, but unfortunately the prices differ from Europe to America to Russia to Asia, Africa, etc. So we will be trying to get an average amount of money you might need to 2cc swap your MR2, Celica, Corolla, or maybe any other car as well. But we will be giving the price ranges that you might need specifically for Celica, MR2 and Corolla, like the cars that have the 1cc already on them, so the mounts are not all that different. Before we start, I honestly want to say that I don't consider a 2cc swap an actual swap, because a swap takes time, needs custom stuff. In the 2cc swap, things are exactly like the 1cc. The way you will take down the engine and put the 1cc back will be the same approximately with the 2cc. Without further ado, let's start with the engine's price. Now, that will be something that will be different from place to place. I bought my engine for 1.4k. My friends from Greece bought the engine for 1.8, 1.7, 1.9. So definitely from day to day to year, from times to times, etc., and from places to places, the price will not be the same. So I have a piece of paper here, a really bad one as you can see, but still I've written down everything that we will need for the swap, and I have the option of cheap, that we will consider cheap, and a little bit of luck, that things go the way we want them and we don't have things that shouldn't happen. And in the other side I have the perfect ones, that we have the perfect possible outcome, but in the same time we're not as lucky. Things don't go as planned and we might need an extra amount of backup money to finish the swap as we want it. So with the engine, we will put a cheap engine and we will consider it good, and with the perfect one we will put a not so cheap engine but still considered, you know, a pretty much okay engine. For me and my country, I will put the cheap to the current date as of 1.5k, and we will put the great one to approximately 1.9. I think that's a good price. Again, these prices, those numbers mean nothing to you if you're from America, from Asia, from anywhere else, because you might find an engine for 400 euros, and that might be insane, and then you might not be able to find an engine for under 2k. Things are not the same everywhere, but I think Greece's prices are actually a little bit high because we don't have as many 2cc's as we would like to. With the engine part, we mean that we have the engine, spark plugs, I mean everything on the engine, oil pan, spark plugs, injectors, sensors, everything. Once we're done with the engine, something next to it is the transmission. Now, people really mess up the idea of the transmission. Everyone says that you need a 2cc and a 2cc transmission. That's not true. You can actually combine a 2cc with a 1cc transmission, or whatever C transmission you have, C56, C60, C62, C64. What else do we have? I'm not sure if we have C66. I think we have that. But yeah, the deal here is that the best transmission you can get for NA applications will be the 2cc one, the short one with the perfect ratio for the 2cc to put its power down. But that doesn't mean that you cannot use your stock MR2 or your stock 5-speed from the Celica on your swap. So on the cheap side, the way I did it, the cheapest possible way, because I was really tight on the budget and I did not know if I will be able to finish the whole swap, we will put 0, because we have the transmission from the 1cc. So if you go from an MR2 to a 2cc, you can still use the transmission and you don't have to change anything on it. So I put 0, and now that if you want to do it perfectly and go with a 6-speed, if you go with a Celica or a Corolla, you can only pay the transmission. Or if you have a 6-speed on your MR2, if it's a facelift one. Now, if you're unlucky and you have a pre-facelift MR2, the price will not be only the transmission. We'll put the transmission around 600 euros, or let's make it 500 because that's actually where they go for. I've seen some for 400 euros, but I've seen some for 7. But we'll put half a thousand just to be safe from all around the globe. But the thing is that if you have an MR2, a pre-facelift one, we will put an extra amount of 200 because you actually have to make a modification on the top of the selector, because the way the 2ZZ's transmission sits is, first of all, it's for front wheel applications, and you actually put it on the rear of the car, and your cables do not connect properly. They don't even come to reach to make the selector. There are 2 shafts, selector shafts, and that's the whole thing that needs to be swapped. You have to remove the front wheel drive application selector and put a 6-speed with a reverse blockout in order to have everything working. Now we can make a video about that, but for now we'll just put at least 200 euros for the transmission mod if you need it, if you have an MR2, and if it's not a 6-speed, because if it's a 6-speed, I think you just swap the other 1ZZ selector and it's supposed to work. I'm not sure, I haven't done that. Once we are done with that, we go to the second part that people actually still get confused. Oh my god, I need a harness, and harnesses cost from 150 euros to up to like what, 250, 300. We will put 200 euros just to be safe again. But the thing is that if you have a 1ZZ engine, it's completely useless. What you can do, let me put a 0 to the transmission mode. What you can do is pretty much use the 1ZZ harness, repin the end that connects to the ECU, and there are plenty papers out there, like lists about how you're supposed to do it. Take the O2 from sector 316 and put it to sector 110. Put this here, completely remove this pin, repin that, blah blah blah. It takes some time, and you're really supposed to be like woken up and not do a bad mistake, a silly one, because you can pretty much break anything there with one crank. But other than that, if you do everything fine, you're not supposed to do anything. Just do it yourself, put some effort, and that's it. And then the last thing that will cost you $5, worst case scenario, is get 2 plugs that connect to the 2ZZ lift solenoid. It's one thing that the 1ZZ doesn't have. It's, as you see, the engine, and this is the head, this is the headers, let's say. You're from behind as of a view of the MR2, and on your left hand, where the water temp sensor sits, above it there is a small solenoid section that controls the lift activity of the 2ZZ. So you need 2 plugs. One is for oil pressure and one is for, I don't know, oil control, I'm not sure. And then you get 2 wires and you pin them to the exact location that you will have on your paper for the harness, and that's it. I say $5 because, okay, maybe you'll have to ship them from China, but if you're lucky enough and your hardware store has it, $5 is already too much too, like €1, €2 max. Once you're done with that, you're pretty much ready with the harness section. So you need an ECU. Now there is no cheap way of going with an ECU. Unfortunately, there is no 1ZZ ECU that will work. And in order to put it on the perfect side, we will still consider the 2 different ECUs, but they will be both stock. We will not go to the standalone section because the standalone actually cost as much as the whole swap. So in the cheap side, we will put about 180 euros for the ECU, okay? It's a standard European or standard American ECU. And in the perfect side, we will put the OG JDM 60 ECU with a rev limit cutter, lev limit broken, something like that. The thing is that the good ECU, the Japanese one, has a limiter on 180 kilometers per hour. So you kind of want to cut that with Grady ECU, red line. I don't know how they are named in Greek. They are just RPM cutters. So they don't have that limit anymore. You put it as a piggyback to the standard ECU, and it works perfectly fine. So that will cost you approximately $70 already, and if we consider the 60 ECU as superior to the others, that will already cost you $250 for the ECU and $320 for the grade ECU and the grade anti-speed blocker, mocker, fokker. I actually don't know how it's called. Now you're done with the ECU, you have your harness connected to the engine, the transmission, everything is nice and ready, and we go to install it to the car. Now the three engine mounts are exactly the same because they are on the transmission side. So as you lift the engine, all three transmission mounts go perfectly fine and click on their places. But on the passenger side, on the right side of the engine, the timing chain side, things are not the same. You have to do either the cheap way, $0 modification, and let me put that down, €0, no money, just drill the holes of the existing mount a little bit further on the side of the engine. There is the mount with its three studs waiting to connect to three holes in order to be, tightened down with the nuts. What you can do is increase the diameter of the holes on the engine side, so two of the studs from the engine mount can connect, and you do that, and that's perfectly fine, nothing to worry about. The only thing that we will take it as a bad thing, the fitment of the engine now is really tight. So your subframe on the MR2 and your engine's PCV, there is a tube, a metal tube on the crankcase. It's a ventilation tube that actually sits really close to the firewall of the MR2. So if your engine mount is not 100% stiff and doesn't work as it's supposed to, it's old, with some bumps and knocking, you can actually start hearing that this subframe or the firewall is knocking on the engine, or actually the engine is knocking on the firewall. So for the perfect solution is to buy with $60, $70. So the perfect solution for that is there is an MWR, or you can do it yourself in a machine shop with like $60 or $70. It shouldn't be more than that. It's a thingy, it's an adapter actually, it's a metal thing that connects to the stock 1ZZ engine mount, and then it has the three holes that go and you put bolts in them. It's kind of weird, but if you type MWR passenger side 2ZZ swap adapter, you will find it is a small little thing like that with four holes on it, one for the engine mount and three for the engine. That's it, you're done with that. Now you've put the engine inside your engine bay. Now here is the trick. You have the engine installed, connected, and it's pretty much ready. But you have two more things that you have to consider. Now if you had the 1ZZ completely stock, you will need to build an intake from the beginning, so that will approximately cost you $100, $120, if not more, to make a perfect, more actually, $120 for the tubing side and everything, and then for the filter at least more $50. So we're looking for approximately $170 to have the completely intake side done. But if you are a racer like me and you've installed a cone filter on your 1ZZ for better noise and those intake suction sounds, you can pay actually $0 because the diameters are exactly the same, besides the throttle body that is a little bit larger in the 2ZZ than the 1ZZ, so you might need a new coupler to fit on the 2ZZ throttle body and then to your already existing tube with the muff. And then we have the exhaust side. Now the thing here is a little bit tricky. There is no way to go completely zero, unfortunately, but there is a way to make things way cheaper. From 700, 800 euros, that will be a complete and nice header to exhaust system that will let the 2ZZ breathe properly, and you will feel all the power, everything will be perfect, even more than the stock 2ZZ actually. You will feel more power than the stock you're upgrading now. The cheap way here is to have the 1ZZ exhaust as it is, and the way it comes to the catalytic converter, you want to actually delete that. Don't hold with the stock 1ZZ cat, because you're actually losing a lot of horsepower. Now you're killing the engine to the point of overheating the whole exhaust system. Cut that, remove that, and have the 2ZZ headers that the engine came with cut on the top of the tubes, all four of them, on a triangular way. So now you can actually move the headers, and that's only for the MR2, because on the Celica there is no worries. With the Corolla there is no worries. You just put the stock one, and I think that's pretty much it. That's zero actually. With the Corolla and the Celica you can pay zero for headers and exhaust, but in the MR2 you will still pay zero, but you will need a welder if you're not one. I wasn't, so it wasn't zero. Still, I will put zero because someone might have a welder in his house and he might be able to do it by himself. So you cut 4 triangles on the tubes on the top side where the header connects to the engine, and now you can move the header to a kind of a weird position where it takes an angle to the top and doesn't hit on the subframe. The issue is that you have the subframe connected on the car and the header's tube just comes here. Exactly, that's the image you're looking for. That's your subframe, and that's how your 2ZZ header fits. It doesn't actually, it hits and you cannot do anything. So by cutting the 4 tubes here, you give an angle like that, and now you have clearance that allows the headers to go above the subframe, and now you weld whatever pipe you want here and connect it to the rest of the exhaust. That's a way to get to zero payment, but for me, I couldn't weld it myself. I didn't have a welder, so I paid what, 80 euros for someone to cut and weld that, so it wasn't way too expensive. So in the cheap side we see a lot of zeros, but in the perfect side we see lots of money. So that's where the difference kicks in. People consider perfect the only way to go, and then we don't actually search for the perfect, or we are not able to do the perfect, stay outside, because we are like, oh hey, we cannot pay 4K, 5K for a swap, but the thing is you can do it for 2-3K. But let's go with the service part now, because we're not done. On the oil filter and oil, you will still have to pay approximately 80 euros both sides, cheap or expensive. That's something that you don't want to miss out. So 80 euros in both sides. Transmission fluid, now there is the cheap way that I did, and 2 years now everything works fine, with 30 euros approximately for 1.9 liters, because I had the stock LSD. If you don't have an LSD on your 1ZZ transmission, then the thing is that you might need an extra 15 bucks to have everything properly done. But if you go to the perfect side with some proper LSD transmission fluid, you might have to pay about 80 euros, because it's 40 per liter, so it's pretty expensive for 2 liters that you will need. And if you don't have an LSD and you will need 2 point something, you will have to pay 120 euros for just the transmission fluid. That's now opinions and perspective. Someone might want his transmission to survive forever and want to take perfect care of it. Some others are idiots, or called idiots like me, and they don't mind going with something cheaper. That pretty much fine. For the 2 years I've been abusing the whole engine with the transmission. Last but not least are the gaskets and the common issues. Now for the gaskets, I would put on the cheap one 0, because you might be lucky. Cheap plus luck, no gasket to be swapped. It's fine. But if we go to the perfect side, you will need approximately 140, 120 euros to do the common ones. The valve cover gasket, maybe the water pump gasket is leaking, or mine, for example, is leaking, but the leak is so little that so far I've no need of swapping it or changing it. Or the mirror timing chain cover gasket, you might need to swap that too. The crankcase gasket, so all that adds up to approximately 140, and the thing is that it's good to do it, but at the same time, if they are not leaking, why swap them? And again, on the last part, we will go again with the service and the maintaining issues. If you got a good engine, there will be less things to swap. For me, I had no problems beside the camshafts, but I didn't swap the camshafts till recently, and I've been using the car with wiped cams for 2 years. everything looks fine. Yeah, we were missing some horsepower, that's for sure. But besides that, the engine was working, the car was fine, and it did survive 2 years completely fine. And now that I have the good cams, I just feel a small significant boost on lift. When I engage lift, I feel that the car is a little bit more powerful and it can give a little bit extra than it did before. But the thing here is that you might want to go the perfect route and you might have a bad water pump, 40-60 bucks, bad camshafts, 400 bucks if it's used, plus the rocker arms, plus this, plus that. You might have sensors that are damaged. You have a bad O2 sensor that you can use from the 1ZZ, but you might want to get a new one because, I don't know, you might have issues with the throttle body, gunky, the TPS might be bad, the idle control valve might be bad, so you might want to swap the 1ZZ one. So there are lots of variables we cannot put down. But for me, the cheap and perfect way, $0. I did not pay for anything else. I did not need anything else. I was lucky enough that with a cheap engine, everything, till today at least, let's not jinx it, was perfectly okay. And if not perfectly, then just okay. Good enough to work, good enough to race, and good enough to win races and do the daily driving I need. On the perfect side, with so many variables, we can put from $1 up to 500, 600, 1,000 euros. I don't want to do this because it's kind of unrealistic. Why would you buy an engine with 1.9K that has so many issues? And if you're that unlucky that you did have no imaging of the engine you're buying, then the best thing you can do is send it back. And if that's not available, I don't even know if it's worth working on such damaged engine, because if it has this, if it has that, maybe it had water cooling issues, maybe it had wipe cams for way too long, maybe the sensor gave wrong signals, blah 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 blah, and maybe the whole engine is just junk. So we will not put something huge, we will just put an amount of 300 euros for one bad sensor, water pump not doing its work perfectly fine, the thermostat kinda gunky, doesn't work perfectly, blah blah blah, and we reach to the amount of 300 euros. That's everything, and let's have the perfect one here. The price of the perfect one here might be a little bit scary, but you know, if you want to go good, you might, you know, give a little bit more than the average. And on my right side, we will put the cheap one. Now the difference is insane. The difference, as you can see, is pretty big, almost 3K if not more, and I kind of forgot to talk about more variables like the clutch. A 1ZZ clutch, if it's in good condition, it will work perfectly fine, but if not, obviously you will have to do a new clutch work. And what else? Still, the price on the cheap one is really cheap, and I'm trying to understand what I missed. But yeah, after searching on the internet what I'm missing, I still don't think that I'm missing anything. Everything is here, and it's about if we consider some imperfections, maximum will be 2K with a cheap engine. The only thing that actually costs here is the engine itself, and then the only things that would cost more besides the ECU will be things that will go wrong. If everything goes right, everything is fine with the engine, you're looking for under 2K dollars, euros to do the swap. If you want to go the perfect route though, you're considering pushing about 3, if not more, 1,000 euros extra to have a perfectly working 2ZZ. The difference here will be that the perfectly working 2ZZ with a great transmission and like better ECU and better this and better that will obviously smoke the one with the 1ZZ transmission with not so good ECU. Yeah, they won't be the same car, but if you want a 2ZZ because your 1ZZ broke down and, you know, paying again to build the 1ZZ to have again 138 horsepower is kind of a bad idea. You can go that route, make it cheap, make it work, and slowly work your way up, exactly the way I did. I had a shitty 2ZZ, my MR2 was not doing the perfect times, people would smoke me, not smoke me actually, for the category I was racing it was still fine, but slowly from the bad ECU I went to an even better standalone ECU. From bad headers and bad exhaust I built the absolute or for me, the absolute best PP style headers to a very good exhaust that has a valve on it, so you can have, you know, a great daily driver that doesn't make any noise. And then if you want to race, you have a straight pipe, a complete straight pipe. But yeah, if I keep on talking, I will find things to talk about. Every question is accepted down in the comment section below. If I forgot anything, I will make a poster here saying, oh shit, I forgot that, dude, we have to put that too. And I will be maybe talking about it if it's a big thing, the thing that I forgot and I've written right here that I wish it's blank. For now, I will see you in the next video. I wish we will find someone to race, because things are really boring here and the MR2 is hungry. We have to feed it. So peace out.